The contract sat between them like a loaded weapon, heavy with implication and dangerous to touch. Zuri Banks stared at the man across the expanse of the obsidian mahogany desk. CEO Kong Teo. He was Seoul's most formidable titan of industry, devastatingly beautiful in a tailored charcoal suit that cost more than her father's entire house, and rumored to have absolutely no interest in women. Their families had arranged this union for cold, hard business, nothing more, nothing less. But when his dark, obsidian eyes snapped up to meet hers, something flickered in their depths. It wasn't indifference. It was hunger. A recognition so raw and terrifying it stole the breath from her lungs. He stood abruptly, the movement sharp and violent, his jaw clenched tight enough to snap. He looked at her like she had just shattered every assumption he had ever built about his own existence. "Sign it," he said, his voice rough, scraping against the silence of the office like sandpaper on silk. "Before I do something we will both regret. Welcome to Afro-Korean Soul Tales, family, and I am so incredibly grateful for your love and support towards this channel. I will continue to pour my heart into bringing you the best stories, but you will only get notified if you are subscribed and your notification bell is turned on. Hurry and do that right now before we dive back in." Zuri's hand trembled visibly as she reached for the gold fountain pen. This was insanity. She was agreeing to bind her life to a stranger, a cold, untouchable billionaire who reportedly viewed romance as an inefficiency and women as irrelevant. Her father's logistics company was drowning in insurmountable debt, the shark circling, and this arrangement was the only lifeline that could pull them from the abyss. CEO Kang needed a wife to satisfy the archaic demands of his traditional family elders and secure a crucial merger that required a family man image. It was a transaction. It was business. It was nothing personal. Except the way he was looking at her felt intensely, violently personal. She signed her name, Zuri Banks, with sharp, deliberate strokes, the ink sealing her fate. Teo took the contract the moment she lifted the pen, snatching it away without brushing her skin, yet she felt the heat radiating from him like a furnace. Up close, he was even more devastating than the magazine covers suggested. High, aristocratic cheekbones, full lips pressed into a hard, uncompromising line, and eyes that seemed to peel back her layers and see straight through her carefully constructed armor. "The wedding is in 2 weeks," he stated, his deep voice wrapping around the words with a precise, clipped cadence. "My assistant, Secretary Yoon, will handle the arrangements. You will move into my penthouse 3 days prior to the ceremony to avoid media speculation." That was it. No, nice to meet you. No getting to know each other over coffee. No pretense that this was anything other than a merger of assets. But his eyes told a different story. They betrayed him, tracing the line of her throat, lingering on the curve of her lips for a heartbeat too long before he caught himself, flinching as if burned, and looked away toward the window. "I'll see you in 2 weeks," he dismissed her. He left the room through a side door without another word, leaving Zuri sitting alone in the vast, air-conditioned chill of his office, wondering what kind of beautiful hell she had just agreed to enter. The next 2 weeks dissolved into a chaotic blur of boxes, goodbyes, and anxiety. Zuri resigned from her teaching job, packed her life into cardboard containers, and tried desperately to ignore the worried glances of her mother. The tabloids were already having a field day. They had speculated about Kong Tao's sexuality for years, citing his lack of public relationships, his aversion to scandal, and the icy distance he kept from everyone, regardless of gender. "Maybe he's just private," Keisha, Zuri's best friend, suggested one afternoon as they sat amidst piles of clothes. "Or maybe he's asexual. Or maybe it doesn't matter because this isn't a real marriage, Zuri." "I know," Zuri interrupted, folding a sweater with unnecessary force. "It's business. 2 years, then we divorce quietly. The debt is gone, the merger is secure, and we both walk away." But she couldn't stop thinking about the office. She couldn't scrub the memory of how he had looked at her like a man dying of thirst who had just found water, like she had awakened something he thought was long dead. 3 days before the wedding, Zuri stood before the imposing steel doors of the Kang residence. She arrived at the penthouse with 2 suitcases and a chest full of doubts. The space was exactly what she had feared: modern, minimalist, expensive, and utterly devoid of a soul. It was like living inside a Architectural Digest spread, pristine marble, glass walls overlooking the Seoul skyline, chrome accents, but not a single personal photograph or stray item. Teo wasn't there. His assistant, a terrifyingly efficient woman named Secretary Yoon, met her at the door. Mr. Kong works late most nights, Yoon explained with professional detachment as she led Zuri down a long, gallery-like hallway. He prefers not to be disturbed before the chef prepares his coffee at 9 a.m. Meals are served in the dining room at 7 o'clock, 1 o'clock, and 8 o'clock. If you require anything, utilize the intercom system. Will I see him at all before the wedding? Zuri asked, her voice echoing in the empty space. Secretary Yoon's expression flickered with something that might have been pity, or perhaps just annoyance. Mr. Kang is very busy. Translation: he was avoiding her. That first night, the silence of the penthouse was deafening. It was too quiet, too perfect, a beautiful prison in the sky. Zuri tossed and turned in the guest suite's massive bed, the high thread count sheets feeling cold against her skin. By midnight, she gave up on sleep. Desperate for tea and a distraction, she wandered out to the kitchen, the marble floors cool beneath her bare feet. She froze in the doorway. Teo was standing at the kitchen island, illuminated only by the soft under-cabinet lighting. He wasn't wearing the armor of his suit. He stood there in gray pajama pants and a simple white t-shirt that clung to his broad shoulders. He looked up, startled, the glass of water in his hand pausing halfway to his mouth. For a long, suspended moment, they just stared at each other. Without the barrier of his tailored clothes and his CEO persona, he looked younger, more human, more vulnerable. His dark hair was mussed from running his hands through it, and the exhaustion carved into his features was plainly visible. I didn't mean to disturb you, Zuri whispered, suddenly hyper-aware of her own appearance, silk sleep shorts and a tank top that left her arms and legs exposed. You're not, he said automatically. But his eyes betrayed him again. They traveled down her body, tracing the curve of her hip, the line of her leg, before he physically forced his gaze to snap back to her face. Can't sleep, she offered, moving toward the kettle to give her hands something to do. New place. New everything. Work, he clipped out, the words sharp. There is a hostile takeover attempt I am mitigating. At midnight. Billionaires don't sleep, Miss Banks. There's a hint of humor in there, she noted, turning to face him. The first crack in the ice. Do you want tea? He asked abruptly, changing the subject. They ended up sitting at the kitchen island, nursing cups of chamomile in the semi-darkness. They didn't look at each other, yet the air between them was thick, charged with an electricity that made the fine hairs on Zuri's arms stand up. Teo's presence was overwhelming. Even in cotton pajamas, he radiated power and control, but beneath it, Zuri sensed a profound, aching loneliness. Can I ask you something? Zuri asked, breaking the silence. Teo swirled his tea. You can ask. I might not answer. Are you gay? The question hung between them like a grenade with a pin pulled. Teo's jaw tightened, the muscles bunching, and for a terrifying second, she thought he would storm out or fire back with anger. Instead, he turned his head slowly, meeting her eyes with a gaze that was searing in its intensity. Why does it matter? Because I'm about to marry you, Zuri said, holding his gaze. Because I'd like to know what I'm signing up for beyond the contract. The rumors. They say you don't touch women. The rumors are convenient, he said carefully, his voice low. They keep people from asking questions. They keep people from expecting things I cannot give. That's not an answer, Teo. No. His eyes darkened, burning into hers. It isn't. But it is all you are getting tonight. He stood up and left her there in the kitchen, the scent of his expensive soap lingering in the air long after he was gone. The wedding was a spectacle of excess. It was held in Seoul's most exclusive garden venue, a riot of white roses and crystal chandeliers. Hundreds of guests filled the seats, dignitaries, celebrities, business tycoons. Media drones buzzed overhead, broadcasting the union of the year. Zuri wore a gown that cost more than her parents' lifetime earnings, a masterpiece of lace and silk that felt like a costume. She felt like an actress stepping onto a stage, playing the role of the blushing bride. Teo waited at the altar, devastating in a black tuxedo. He played the perfect groom with practiced ease, nodding to guests, shaking hands. But when Zuri reached him, when he lifted her veil and looked at her, the mask slipped. His hands trembled. Just slightly. A tremor in his fingers as they framed her face. The officiant spoke the words, but Zuri heard none of them. She was lost in the storm of Teo's eyes. When the time came for the kiss, the moment that was supposed to be a perfunctory, polite peck for the cameras, everything shifted. His lips brushed hers tentatively at first. Then he froze. A sound, low and guttural, vibrated in his chest. And then he kissed her like a drowning man finding the surface. It wasn't polite. It was desperate. It was hungry. His hands tightened in her hair, tilting her head back, deepening the contact with a shocking intensity that drew audible gasps from the front row. Zuri melted into him, her hands clutching his lapels, shocked by the fire that ignited in her veins. He tasted of mint and suppressed longing. For 10 seconds, the world fell away. There was no contract, no debt, no rumors. Just the two of them colliding. When they finally broke apart, both of them were breathing hard, chests heaving. Teo looked shell-shocked. He stared at her mouth, his eyes wide with panic, before he stepped back, physically putting distance between them. The officiant had to clear his throat twice to dismiss the congregation. Okay, besties, pause right there. Did you feel that heat? Because I definitely did. If you are loving the chemistry between Zuri and CEO Kang, do me a huge favor and smash that like button right now. And I want to know your thoughts. Drop a comment below. Do you think Teo is really hiding a secret, or is he just falling hard for Zuri? Let me know your theories. Now, back to the drama. The reception was torture. After that explosive kiss, Teo barely touched her. He maintained a rigid, careful distance, playing the attentive husband for the cameras, but recoiling whenever their skin brushed accidentally. Yet, Zuri caught him watching her. Every time she turned, his eyes were on her, dark, hungry, and deeply conflicted. Your husband cannot stop staring at you, Keisha whispered, handing Zuri a glass of champagne. For a man who prefers men, he looks like he wants to devour you whole. He's not. Zuri trailed off, realizing she still didn't know what he was. It's complicated. It looks simple from here, girl. That man is obsessed. But if he wanted her, why was he acting like she was radioactive? The wedding night was awkward and suffocating. They returned to the penthouse in a heavy silence. Teo immediately retreated to his study with a curt good night, leaving Zuri standing alone in the hallway in her wedding dress. She went to the guest room. Still the guest room, she noted bitterly, and tried not to feel the sting of rejection. This is what you signed up for, she told herself as she scrubbed the makeup from her face. A marriage of convenience. No romance. No intimacy. So why did her heart ache? She changed into pajamas and lay in the dark, but the ghost of his lips on hers haunted her. The way he had trembled. The conflict in his eyes. It felt like he was at war with himself. Around 2 a.m., she heard footsteps in the hallway. They paused right outside her door. She held her breath, her heart hammering against her ribs, wondering if he would knock. If he would come in. But after a long, agonizing minute, the footsteps retreated. Zuri lay in the darkness, feeling lonelier than she had ever felt in her life. The next morning, Teo was gone before she woke. This became their pattern. He left at dawn, returned late at night, and avoided being alone in a room with her at all costs. They were perfect strangers sharing a zip code. A week into the marriage, Zuri reached her breaking point. She found him in his study around midnight. He was working, bathed in the blue light of his monitors. She didn't bother knocking. She marched in, slamming the heavy door behind her. We need to talk. He looked up, surprised by her tone, his glasses reflecting the screens. About what? About this farce, she snapped. About the fact that we are married, but you treat me like I have a contagious disease. About what the hell happened at our wedding that made you kiss me like that, and then spend the next week treating me like I don't exist. Teo stood slowly, uncoiling his height from the chair. Something dangerous flickered in his expression. You want to talk about the kiss? Yes. Fine. He moved around the desk, stalking toward her. Zuri fought the urge to step back. That kiss was a mistake. It will not happen again. Why? She demanded. Because this is a business arrangement. Because you deserve better than. He cut himself off, turning away, his hand raking through his hair. Better than what? Better than a husband who actually wants me? You think I don't want you? The question was ripped from his throat, raw and tortured. He spun back to face her. I have wanted you since the moment you walked into my office to sign that contract. I have spent every night for the past 3 weeks in agony because I cannot stop thinking about your skin, your mouth, the way you look at me like you see past the walls I spent 30 years building. Zuri's breath caught in her throat. Then why push me away? Because I don't know how to do this. The confession burst out of him, cracking his composure. Because I have spent my entire life convinced I was broken, incapable of this. Every relationship I attempted ended with me feeling nothing, cold and empty. Everyone assumed I was gay or defective or a robot. And I let them believe it because it was easier than admitting I just felt nothing. He stepped closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. Then you appear. And suddenly, I am feeling everything. I am wanting everything. And I am terrified. I don't know how to handle the volume of it. The confession hung between them, vibrating in the air. Zuri stared at him, seeing the terrified boy beneath the billionaire facade. He wasn't cold. He was overwhelmed. You're not broken, Teo, she said softly. She stepped into his space, bold despite her racing heart. You don't know that. I know you kiss me like you were starving. I know you avoid me because you want me too much, not too little. I know. She reached up, her hand cupping his jaw. His stubble was rough against her palm. He leaned into her touch, closing his eyes as if in prayer. I know I want you too, she whispered. Teo's control snapped. He closed the remaining distance, backing her up until she hit the wall, caging her in with his body. Don't say that unless you mean it, Zuri. I mean it. I've spent a week thinking I married a man who couldn't stand the sight of me. Finding out I was wrong as he kissed her before she could finish. This kiss was different from the wedding. It wasn't a performance. It was a claiming. Less desperate, more deliberate, but no less intense. His hands found her waist, pulling her body flush against his, and he groaned at the contact, the sound vibrating through her chest. You have no idea, he murmured against her mouth, nipping at her lower lip. How much I have wanted to do this. Show me. They stumbled toward his bedroom in a tangle of reaching hands and shared breath. Teo worshipped her. He touched her slowly, reverently, like she was a rare artifact he had been denied his entire life. Every touch was a question, every kiss an answer. When they finally came together, the friction was electric, a collision of souls. It felt like something fundamental in the universe shifted. Two lonely people finding a connection neither had thought possible. Afterward, Teo held her like she might turn to smoke and disappear. His face was buried in the crook of her neck, his breathing heavy. I have never felt this before, he admitted, his voice rough with emotion. Never wanted someone this way. You have awakened something in me I didn't know existed. Zuri stroked his damp hair, feeling utterly content. Good, because you've awakened something in me too. The following morning, however, brought the cold light of day. Zuri woke alone. The sheets beside her were cold. Panic seized her chest. Had last night been a mistake in his eyes? Had the walls gone back up? She found him in the kitchen, fully dressed for work, his expressionless mask firmly back in place. When he saw her, something flickered in his eyes, longing? Fear, before he shut it down. Last night, he started, his voice stiff. Was it a mistake? She finished for him, her heart sinking. No, but it complicates things. How? Because this was supposed to be simple. Business. Now it is. He struggled for the words. Now I cannot stop thinking about you. I cannot focus on the quarterly reports because I am wondering what you are doing. I cannot sleep because I want you in my bed. Is that so terrible? I don't know how to be a real husband, Zuri. I will fail you. Then we figure it out together. He studied her for a long moment, conflict warring in his eyes. Then he pulled her close, kissing her forehead. I have to go to Singapore. 3 days. Business that cannot be delayed. When I get back, we will talk. Really talk. About what this marriage means. Promise? Promise. But 3 days became 5. Then a week. Teo called occasionally, but his voice was distant, professional. He gave updates on the acquisition, asked if she needed anything from the house staff, and then hung up. Zuri tried not to feel abandoned, but the doubt crept in like a fog. Was he running away? Was the intimacy too much for him? She was drowning in insecurity when Keisha dragged her to a high-profile charity gala that Kong Enterprises was sponsoring. You're his wife, Keisha insisted, zipping up Zuri's dress. You represent the family. You should be there. The gala was exactly what Zuri expected, Seoul's elite dripping in diamonds and judgment. She felt out of place, hyper-aware of the whispers that followed her. CEO Kang's mysterious foreign wife. The American nobody. She was contemplating sneaking out the back when a man approached her. He was handsome in a slick, predatory way, with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Mrs. Kang, he purred. I am Director Park, a business associate of your husband. He didn't mention you would be attending tonight. He doesn't know, Zuri said politely. He is still in Singapore. Something calculating entered Park's expression. He stepped too close, invading her personal space. Then you must be lonely. Stuck in that penthouse all alone while he plays tycoon abroad. Perhaps I could keep you company? I am known to be much warmer than our dear Teo. No. The word didn't come from Zuri. It came from directly behind her, cold as absolute zero. She spun around to find Teo standing there. He was still in his travel clothes, a wrinkled linen shirt, no tie, and he looked absolutely furious. Teo, we are leaving, he growled. He took her arm, his grip firm, possessing. He didn't even acknowledge Director Park's stammered greeting. He simply turned and marched Zuri out of the ballroom. The drive back to the penthouse was suffocating. Teo's jaw was clenched so tight Zuri could see the muscle feathering. His knuckles were white on the steering wheel. She had never seen him this angry. Are you going to tell me what that was about? She finally asked as they entered the private elevator. Director Park is a snake who has been trying to undermine my company for years. Seeing him anywhere near you. He cut himself off as the doors opened. He stormed into the living room, tossing his keys onto the table with a clatter. What were you thinking going there alone? Do you have any idea how dangerous that is? Dangerous? It was a charity gala for orphans, Teo. It was a room full of people sipping champagne. It was a room full of people who would love to exploit any weakness I show. And you. He stopped, breathing hard, turning to face her. You are the biggest weakness I have ever had. I am not some damsel who needs protecting. I know that. The words exploded out of him. But watching him touch your arm, smiling at you like he had any right, knowing I have been gone for a week and you probably thought I was avoiding you again. He pushed both hands through his hair, looking tortured. I wanted to break his hands for daring to breathe the same air as you. Zuri's anger deflated instantly, replaced by a dawning understanding. She stepped closer. You're jealous. Insanely. He pulled her close, pressing his forehead against hers. I cut my trip short because I couldn't stand being away from you anymore. I rushed to that gala from the airport because I saw the guest list. And seeing another man trying to. His arms tightened around her waist, possessing her. You're mine, Zuri. I know I have no right to feel that way after disappearing, but I can't help it. Then stop disappearing, she whispered, cupping his face. Stop running every time things get real between us. I am your wife. Start acting like you want me to be. I do want that. He kissed her desperately. I want everything with you. It terrifies me how much. They made it to the bedroom this time. What happened there erased any lingering doubts about the nature of their relationship. Teo showed her exactly how much he wanted her, over and over, until they were both exhausted, satisfied, and tangled together in the darkness. I'm sorry, he murmured later, tracing patterns on her back. For disappearing. For making you doubt. For being terrible at this. You're learning. We both are. Stay with me tonight, he pleaded softly. In my bed. Always. Always. Besties, let's be real. There is nothing better than a jealous, possessive CEO, right? If you agree, comment CEO Kang down below. And if you are enjoying this story so far, please make sure you hit that subscribe button. It really helps the channel grow and lets me bring you more content like this. Now, let's see if their happiness can actually last. The next few weeks brought a tentative new normal. Teo still worked insane hours, but he came home to Zuri every night. They shared breakfast. They were learning the small things: his love for old black and white cinema, her passion for spicy food and photography. Small intimacies transformed their contract into a life. But the business world noticed. Suddenly, Zuri was invited to events. Her opinions were sought. Her presence at Teo's side was expected. Some were welcoming. Others, like Director Park, watched with calculating eyes, looking for leverage. You need to be careful, Teo warned after a particularly tense dinner party. There are people who would love to hurt me through you. I can handle myself. I know. But let me worry anyway. His protectiveness was endearing, if occasionally suffocating. He had security follow her discreetly. He vetted everyone she met. Zuri understood why, in his world, love was a liability. A month into their real marriage, the nightmare began. Zuri was working on her photography portfolio in the living room when Secretary Yoon appeared, her usually pristine face pale and shaken. Mrs. Kang, there has been an accident. The world tilted on its axis. Mr. Kang's car was forced off the road. He is at Seoul Memorial Hospital. Zuri didn't remember the drive. She barely processed Yoon's explanation about a hostile action or brake tampering. All she could think about was Teo. Hurt. Bleeding. Alone. She found him in a private room, trying to get out of bed while arguing with 3 doctors. His ribs were bandaged, his face bruised, and pain was etched into every line of his body. I need to handle this, he was shouting. Director Park thinks he can. He stopped when he saw Zuri in the doorway. You shouldn't be here, he said, his voice straining. Where else would I be? She rushed to his side, her hands hovering over his injuries, afraid to touch. You're hurt. I'm fine. It looks worse than it is. Liar. What happened? Someone decided sending me a message was worth attempted murder. His eyes were cold flint. They are going to regret it. Mr. King needs rest, the doctor interrupted. No stress. No work for 3 days. Impossible. Everyone out, Zuri commanded, her voice steel. The medical staff fled. She turned to Teo. You are going to rest. You are going to let your team handle business. And you are going to stop pretending you are invincible. Zuri, no. You don't get to almost die and act like it's nothing. Her voice broke, the tears finally spilling over. I was terrified, Teo. I thought I lost you before we even had a real chance. His expression softened instantly. He pulled her carefully onto the bed beside him, wincing at the movement. I'm sorry. You're right. I'll rest. He held her tight. But we need to talk about security. This wasn't random. Someone is targeting me, and by extension, they will target you. What do you mean? I mean, whoever did this knows that hurting you would destroy me more than any car crash. They will come for you next. He was right. 3 days later, Zuri was leaving the penthouse for a lunch meeting. 2 men in masks emerged from a black van in the parking garage. She thought Teo had insisted on self-defense classes, but they were stronger, prepared. A cloth was pressed over her face. The last thing she saw before the chemical darkness claimed her was her phone skittering across the concrete, Teo's name flashing on the screen. She woke in a concrete room that smelled of mold and damp despair. Her hands were zip-tied to a chair. Through a grimy window, she could see the skyline of an abandoned industrial district. Finally awake, a voice sneered. One of the men held up a phone. Good. Mr. Kang should be receiving the video we sent right about now. Let's see if his wife is worth destroying his company for. Terror spiked through her veins, freezing her blood. But she forced it down. Teo would come. She knew it with absolute certainty. She just had to survive until he did. Back at the penthouse, Teo stared at the video on his tablet. The screen showed Zuri, tied up, frightened but defiant. A distorted voice listed demands. Give up the merger. Step down as CEO. Transfer shares to a shell company owned by Director Park. Sir, Secretary Yoon whispered, looking sick. What do we do? Find her. His voice was devoid of all emotion. It was empty. And that was far more terrifying than rage. Use every resource. Trace the video. Hack the traffic grids. Call in the deaths. I don't care what it costs or who I have to break. He was already moving, pulling a sleek black handgun from a biometric safe in his desk. He checked the magazine with a terrifying efficiency that revealed a side of him the business world never saw. Teo had grown up in a family with dark roots. He knew how to fight dirty. And their demands? Yoon asked. Stall them. Make them think I am crumbling. He slid the weapon into a holster. But I am not giving them a single share. I am giving them nothing but their own destruction. This could start a war, sir. It already has. Teo's eyes were black holes. They took my wife. They signed their death warrants the moment they touched her. It took 4 hours. For hours of Teo mobilizing a private security army, calling in favors from the shadows of Seoul's underworld. He located the warehouse in the Incheon docks. If she has a single scratch on her, he told his team leader as they loaded into armored SUVs, everyone in that building dies screaming. The assault was swift, brutal, and precise. Teo didn't wait in the car. He led the charge. He moved through the warehouse like a wraith, dismantling the resistance with a cold fury. Nothing mattered but Zuri. He kicked open the door to the holding room. The guard raised a weapon, but Teo was faster, 2 shots, controlled and lethal. He found her, still tied to the chair. Bruised, shaking but alive. Something inside his chest cracked open, a soundless shatter. "Teo," she cried out. "I'm here." He fell to his knees beside her, cutting the zip ties with a knife, his hands trembling violently now that the violence was over. "I'm here, Zuri. I've got you. You came. I would have torn this city apart brick by brick to find you." He pulled her into his arms, burying his face in her neck, inhaling her scent to prove she was real. "I would have burned my company to the ground. None of it matters. Only you." The drive back was silent, save for Zuri's quiet weeping as the adrenaline crashed. Teo held her hand the entire way, his thumb stroking her knuckles, his eyes never leaving her face. Back at the penthouse, he didn't call the staff. He took her to the bathroom himself. He washed the grime and blood from her skin with gentle, tender hands, treating her like porcelain. He carried her to bed, tucking the duvet around her. "I'm okay," she whispered, catching his hand. "You were taken because of me." His voice was wrecked, raw with guilt. "Because I was arrogant enough to think I could protect you. I put you in danger by making you mine." He pulled away, looking at the floor. "Maybe everyone was right. Maybe I should have kept this marriage purely business. Maybe loving you makes me weak. Don't." Zuri sat up, grabbing his face, forcing him to look at her. "Don't you dare pull away from me now, Kong Teo. I chose this. I chose you. And yes, your world is dangerous. But I would rather face that danger with you than be safe without you. Zuri, you moved heaven and earth to find me today. You were willing to destroy your legacy to get me back. That is not weakness. That is love." He kissed her then, a desperate seal on a blood oath. "Marry me again," he whispered against her lips. Zuri laughed, a watery, tired sound. "We are already married." "I know, but the first time was a lie. It was business. I want to marry you properly, with vows that actually mean something. I want to choose you publicly, irrevocably, not for a merger, but because I love you." Her breath hitched. "You love me, desperately, completely. So much it terrifies me." He linked their fingers. "You awakened me, Zuri. You made me feel desire, passion, fear, love. All the things I thought I was incapable of. So yes, I love you. Yes," she sobbed. "Yes, I'll marry you again." 6 months later, Teo had systematically dismantled Director Park's operation, ensuring no threat would ever come near his family again. He had restructured the company, moving toward cleaner, legitimate tech ventures. "I want to build something pure," he told her one night on the balcony. "Something our children won't be ashamed of." "Children." Zuri smiled. "Eventually, if you want them." He pulled her onto his lap. "I want everything with you. A real family. I want that too." They renewed their vows in a small, private ceremony on Jeju Island. No media. No contracts. Just them, Keisha, and the sea breeze. When Teo promised to love her until his last breath, everyone knew it was the absolute truth. "You're mine," he murmured as they danced at the reception. "Completely mine." "And you're mine," Zuri replied. "No more doubts. You've proven you have a heart. You gave it to me." Another 6 months passed. Zuri stood in the bathroom, staring at 2 pink lines on a plastic stick. Pregnant. Joy and terror warred in her chest. It was fast. But looking at the life they had built, the warmth in the penthouse that was once so cold, it felt inevitable. She found Teo in the nursery, a room they had just started discussing renovations for. He was looking at paint swatches. "What do you think of Morning Mist?" he asked, turning around. "I think it's perfect," she said, her voice trembling. She held out the test. "For the baby." Teo froze. He looked at the test, then at her, then back at the test. He sank to his knees. A baby? His voice cracked. We're having a baby? Are you happy? Happy? He looked up at her, tears streaming down his face, the icy CEO completely undone. Zuri, you have given me everything. You saved me from a life of gray silence. You gave me color. You gave me love. And now, a family. He pressed his face against her stomach, wrapping his arms around her waist. How could I be anything but grateful? The pregnancy was a journey. Teo became unbearable in the best way, monitoring her diet, buying entire baby boutiques, reading books to her belly every night. He was convinced it was a girl. She will be a princess, he told her stomach. She will never know violence. Only love. You're going to spoil her, Zuri laughed. Absolutely. When labor started on a rainy Tuesday, Teo drove to the hospital like a man possessed. In the delivery room, he never left her side. He wiped her brow, let her squeeze his hand until his bones creaked, and whispered encouragement in a mix of Korean and English. And then a cry. She's perfect, the doctor announced. Little Hannah entered the world screaming. She had Teo's dark hair and Zuri's nose. Teo stared at his daughter with naked awe. He touched her tiny hand, his large finger trembling. Hello, Hannah, he whispered. I'm your appa. I've been waiting for you. Later, while Zuri slept, Teo rocked Hannah in the quiet of the hospital room. Your mother saved me, he whispered to the sleeping infant. I thought I was broken. Everyone thought I was gay, or cold, or heartless. But she saw me. She walked into my office and woke me up. He looked over at Zuri, sleeping peacefully. Now I feel everything, he vowed to his daughter. And you will grow up knowing that you are wanted. Treasured. That is my promise.